absolute blast. So once again, thank you so much to the LunarCon staff members, everyone who is in charge and has been putting work behind this project since the day it was announced. You're incredible. You're incredible. You're amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope you get some rest because you've been working so hard. Oh my gosh, I've been seeing just absolute trails blaze, just getting that stuff done, and it's just been really incredible to watch. So I hope every single one of you know how awesome you are. I hope you're having an enjoyable night in charge of everything and working on everything, and additionally that you will be able to enjoy the next few days, because LunarCon is a 3-day event. It will be taking place tomorrow and on Sunday, so there'll be a lot of stuff to check. So one more shout out for that. If you type in LunarCon in chat, you can actually see, with exclamation mark, you can actually see the website. Go check out that website, learn about everything that's happening. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. All right, it is now officially 11 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock yours. Let's get this started. I'm going to swap on over to our presentation screen. Now, I was messing around with this for a while. Oh my gosh, now I need to move that chat box up. I was messing for this a while because I was trying really hard to get it. I wanted to make it look like there was a PowerPoint in the game. It was a little tricky. It was a little tricky. There's the visual, troubles here and there, but I think it did a pretty good job. I got a PowerPoint in the game. And so just really excited to do this. Also, so quick mention. I'm gonna give you a test. Not really graphic designer. I wouldn't say so much that. Just I like messing around with layers and trying to make things look legit. It's pretty funny that, the everything fitting everything was just fun to mess around with. So who studied for the exam? Surprise test. I want oh gosh, I would not want to give you all a test. The last time I did a lore quiz, it was pretty difficult. It was a complete accident too. I swear I didn't mean to make it as hard as it was, but it was very difficult. The answer is mock. Nice. Oh my gosh, it works. So quick little mention. I just want to throw it out there because I really like the references. As you can see, I have 2 ferns, right? I put 2 ferns. Oh no, don't kick me out. Okay. Y'all, I didn't realize that they kicked you out of G-pose. Okay, that's something we're gonna learn. Alright. There. Let's reset this up. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. Game, why'd you ruin me like this? Okay, there you go. Still good. Alright. I'll just make sure to there you go. I'm just move this around a couple times so I don't get kicked out. I keep forgetting about that. I keep forgetting about the kick out. Anyways, you see the 2 ferns beside me is because I am between 2 ferns, which is a reference to all the lore panels usually that go on at FanFest or PAX, because Koji Fox's name on the forums is Ferna Hallwez, and he always makes Matt Hilton sit between him and a potted plant because it's between 2 ferns. Get it, 2 ferns. But since I'm not a fern and I don't have ferns, I'm using these images of ferns. These have him emote. I'm gonna have him emote. We're gonna have him talk. I was just I totally forgot about the logout stuff. So let's get that going. There you go. Yeah. Nice. Alrighty. So let's get started. Let's get this panel going. So first of all, once again, seriously, shout out to the LunarCon staff. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Once again, I absolutely love this. This has just been an absolute joy to be able to do, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope this works out very well. And of course, once again, if you have any questions, we will have time for those questions at the end. I will make sure to set that time aside. So please write down the questions you have, right? And once we get to that point, I will say Q&A time. And then make sure you highlight, either ping my name or highlight your question for it. and we'll go ahead and get that going. All right, so of course, here we go. We got Vrandtic Voyages. This panel is a brief geographic and historical overview of the first, the main setting of Final Fantasy XIV, Shadowbringers. And we're going to talk about a little bit of lore, we're going to talk about a little bit of history, we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff that is going to be pertaining to this specific expansion. And I'll explain to you why. But, when's lunch break? After class. But, let's get that hydrate. Alrighty. So, oh my gosh. There's my pointer. I gotta make sure I get my pointer up. Alright. Yo, who's this dude anyway? So you're probably wondering, who am I? The hell? Like, I'm just this random person that just appeared out of nowhere. Probably, for a lot of you. So, let's go ahead. I'm gonna take a quick moment to do a quick introduction. And kind of go over my history of Final Fantasy XIV and how it connects to all of this. Alright. Is the link on the LunarCon website not working for anyone else? I was actually PM'd about it, and I mentioned it to the staff. I think they're getting that ready right now. Let's see, make sure, is that ping up? Alright, let's get that set up. Yeah, who's this scruffy looking nerf herder? Oh my god. Anyways, yeah, so the link is, I think the link is not working on the website. I did mention it to the staff, and I think they're getting that set up. So, I'm not entirely sure. I'll double check to make sure. I'm pretty sure it got fixed. If it hasn't yet, let me... I think, yeah, they said they got it fixed, so I don't know. I'll poke at it. Should be, yeah. Website's being a little weird. Oh, it works with copy paste. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it though. Thank you for letting me know. The hydrates for the ferns. Water them ferns. I'm here. I'm gonna water because you know I'm between two ferns now. You know. There you go. I'm actually not gonna pour because then I'll spill. But yeah. So I started playing Final Fantasy XIV. Started the unending journey, July 2015. So right after the release of Heaven Ward, I want to say give it a month or so, I started playing the game, and from there just got into it. Right, got stuck. You know, got stuck. Been playing it since. Right. And then I went to FanFest. I got to go to FanFest 2016 and in 2018, which was a huge opportunity, right? Definitely was one of the best experiences. And honestly, I'm rooting for 2022, 2023, whenever they start FanFest live again, is one of the best experiences. You should definitely check it out if you get the chance. I highly, highly encourage you to check that out whenever those go live again. So I joined Aetherflow Media in September, right, about the end of September, which is where I did most of my work for lore, posting all kinds of stuff there, right. I actually presented a little bit of a lore article to them, asking if they needed a lore writer, and that's how I got my, you know, more so creating the content behind lore instead of just like researching it and stuff like that. I was able to post, I was able to create articles, I was able to do all sorts of stuff, right. But the most important part, and I know this is a little bit of gloating. I might be gloating a little bit, but I gotta show it off. I gotta show it off. All right. I am the spikes on spikes guy. So I'll go ahead. I have it set up, and this is up to y'all. You can watch it when you have the chance. At FanFest, I was picked out of the crowd to add some lore to what you may know as the vegetarian now in the game, and I decided to put spikes on this fish, and it is this big meme now because like the fact that the fact that they picked me was insane. I didn't even think that would even happen, but they pulled me out of the crowd, right, raised my hand, they picked me. I was like spikes on spikes on spikes, and it went down in history. Oh gosh, 301. All right, yeah. So later we'll talk about that later after this. But yep, I am the Spikes on Spikes guy. If you remember from FanFest.
Unacceptable condition.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Indy, those are your emotes. Indy, I actually have. Check this out. Hang on, Indy. There you go. Look, I got credit for you. So if anyone ever wants to check out some of that fantastic art from that emote artist, the link is right there. And you also check it out on my About page. Fantastic work, by the way. Everyone loves those emotes. So I appreciate you. Thank you. But yeah, there's me. There's me declaring to the world the Spikes on Spikes effect. And just, I want to say it was at that point that I started pursuing the goal of content creation in general, and just being more and more open about the stuff I liked talking about on social media. And just, yeah, that's where it all started. Oh my gosh, I'm not even wearing a hat. What the hell? I just realized. Hold up. I have the hat still. So, like I put it, it's not faced all the way. Here we go. There you go. I still have the hat. And I still wear it, especially for big things like this. So this is my absolute just moment doing the Spikes on Spikes thing. Watch that clip. If you ever want to see it again, type Spikes in the chat. That is my namesake. Honestly, it's one of the biggest things I've ever done for the game. That fix in the Discord? Oh yeah. Alrighty, let's get this. So yeah. To date, right now, I have 8 lore publications through 8 different issues. I have 33 podcast episodes that I've recorded. Talked a bunch on social media, been pinged on Discord, plenty in several role-playing channels, several groups where I get to talk about lore and ask questions, answer questions, all kinds of stuff. So, once again, if you ever have any questions, right, I always open the chat for that kind of stuff. For the panel today specifically, it will be later after, but... if you got my social media, right? Twitter on the SLM. You can join the Discord. You can ask me anytime, and I will always do my best to answer those questions whenever I have the chance. That's enough about me, right? Got a quick intro so y'all know who am I, and then of course, right? I am now designing the SLM Call It, which is my personal platform, content creating platform, world building, writing, what have you, all over the place, and you can check that out throughout the different social medias. So, and now for the main event, right? The thing that everyone is super excited about, because trust me, I'm super excited about this too. Actually, despite the fact I'm presenting this, I'm absolutely just stoked that I got the chance to even do this at all, because I love this kind of stuff. An overview of Norvrandt. Yo, okay, can I just say the person who created the font, the Vrandtic font, huge shout out. I found that on Google. Someone took all the letters from the game and created the actual font out of it. So I think that's pretty dang impressive. You know what I mean? So get that going. And what is this place? Right? You get to ask this question anytime. Typeface, yeah, that's the word. The typeface. What is this place? This place is, in fact.
What the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna be very honest right now. I don't even have Final Fantasy 14.
Oh. Hang on. Let's see.
So what is what is all this? Is it just...
Hold on, just give me just a second. Yeah, so it's a live panel right now. We're talking about the lore of Norvrandt and the First. If you don't mind, we're actually gonna take questions at the end, so that way we'll be able to get everybody. But I'll be presenting for the first hour or so, and just talking about that. But you can ask your questions as well in the text chat as well if you have the chance. Let's see.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh. Vrants. Alrighty. So, what is this place, right? First of all, Norvrandt is the name of the region of the First. that comprises all the remaining territories that were untouched by the Flood of Light, which was stopped at the edge of the world, right? You were able to see how... And, okay, first of all, I should probably say, most important part, this is spoilers. This is spoilers for Shadowbringers. This is spoilers for, I will say, patch 5.1 to 5.3. So just to give you that heads up, if you do want to step away to avoid spoilers, please do so now. But I will go ahead and give you that heads up. Questions are permitted, but we're saving questions for the end. So once we get a chance to go over all the bases, we'll be taking questions at the end. So please feel free to write those down if you have any, and highlight me at the end when we get those, and we'll get as many as we can before the panel ends. Oh yeah, smart. I got you. Think. Oh no, we're good. Alrighty, so yeah, it's there's a lot of spoilers. I just want to make sure everyone knows. But as you may have seen, right, when the Oracle of Light, when Mephilia came and stopped the flood with the help of the Warrior's Light, huge ring of solid crystal was created, and everything that was in that area was protected and became the region that we know today as Norvrandt for the next 100 years. All right. So what's the big thing about Norvrandt that's really cool for me, right? As a lore enthusiast, right? Norvrandt comprises of a history of 100 years after the flood, and everything before the flood that was retained through documentation, through records, through articles, through relics, artifacts. A bunch of survivors retained these memories and histories of their people for a very long time, but we're talking about two separate packets of information, very, very important information, which I like to separate between before the flood, right? Just everything, BF, right? Before the flood, and then after the flood, right? So after the flood is about 100 years, and that's when we come in, is 100 years later. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened during that time frame. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happened before that time frame, and they do a really good job at dividing most of the areas, but sometimes it can get confusing because there's a lot going on when we travel through these areas, right? Not to mention that this area is exclusive to Shadowbringers, right? A lot of previous lore that we've gotten, a lot of previous content that we've gotten has been tied to Eorzea, has been tied to the Far East, which is exclusive to the Source, which is the primary dimension, right? Everything that goes on in Shadowbringers is its own self-pocket, its own reality, essentially, right? Up until 5.3. So that lore and all that stuff is unique to that area, and it's almost fascinating to see how much they were able to create for a singular space during the time of Shadowbringers that does not bear reference at all to anything from the Far East, Eorzea, and so on. And the only thing we're only supposed to really get from that is that it's similar but different, because they separated around 10,000 years ago or so, and it created this huge divide in history, culture, and everything from that point onwards, from the Sundering. So there's a lot changes that you can see it and you might be like, oh, this looks kind of like Eorzea, but in appearance only. There's a lot of history that took place that has nothing to do with what happened in Eorzea, and it's actually pretty cool that they were able to separate that and maintain a sort of uniqueness throughout the length of the expansion. So, pretty cool stuff. I love it. I'm all about it. I'm always talking about it. So, of course, we start with our primary area. This is Lakeland, right? As you can see, we got the art originally from the FanFest panels. We were able to see that region of the lake with the purple trees and everything, and they got to show us all the surrounding regions in those videos, right? And this area, right, Lakeland is actually known as Laxon in the language of the elves, right? Originally, this entire area, and you can say the entire region of Norvrandt, was actually under the sway of the elves, right? The elves commanded a lot of the regions that we saw today. However, they weren't interested in building a nation. That wasn't one of their priorities. They just lived their lives and they did what they wanted to do, but because they didn't have a because they didn't have a center power, because they didn't have a center of control, they were easily pushed out by other individuals, they were pushed out by other peoples, other nations, and they were getting forced and forced and forced closer and closer to the center of this continent. And that's when they realized if they were going to protect themselves, if they were going to protect their lands, they would have to band together. So all the clans got together and they decided it's time to band together, and they chose from those scattered clans a king. Now here's the cool and interesting fact to that. The king that we know, we actually got this king's name in 5. So it was actually funny because they show us in 5.1, but we don't know this person, their true identity until about 5.3. This was the King Tolthawil, right? The legendary King Tolthawil was the first king of Lakeland, and was actually a warrior of light, one of our profession, and was the individual got all the clans together to defend the source, which is the name of the lake in the center of this area, from the rest of the people in the nation. And so there comes to be a problem with this, right? The fact that these elves were pushed and pushed and pushed and forced to this one localized area to protect it, they became very distrustful, very, very distrustful of the locals, and essentially believed that all other people, aside from themselves, are invaders. They don't like the Drawn, they don't like the Galgent, they don't like the Ronzo. The elves are very, very much xenophobic as a result of the facts of being pushed more and more inward and being forced into this very small, secluded space in comparison to basically being able to wander wherever they wanted in days of old. And so this sentiment, right, this sentiment of being limited to this area and how they had to defend themselves all the time, created a lot of resentment, especially resentment in the old guard, in the conservative members that held power in that area, right? They wanted to return to the days when the elves could do whatever they wanted and travel to and fro without any issues. They wanted the glory days again. And because they wanted that, a individual that you may have heard many, many times, especially throughout your length of playing Shadowbringers, an individual known as the Shadowkeeper, heard about this and took advantage of it and was able to muster the forces of these individuals, these conservative elves, to fight the reigning power at the time, the king at the time. And as a result, it led to a massive rebellion, a terrible, terrible, long, drawn-out war, which basically destroyed the nation at its core, and this was one of the primary events that happened prior to the Flood of Light. That's why we no longer have an established nation in the center of this land, but the elves are still very, very much aware of their history. They're very, very much aware of their ancestry, and there are certain elves that do want to retain and regain power in this area despite the rise of the Crystarium. These individuals are known as Nightshade, and you find them in all kinds of fates. You find them mentioned in Leave quests, you find them mentioned in various locations. These Nightshade members are trying to regain power and regain once again the glory days of old, and you can see them scattered about throughout the region. There's a lot of really cool places that result as part of this history. All right, because of this long history we have, prior to the Civil War, most of these areas that you can visit in Lakeland, right, such as the Stay, if you visited the Austral Imperative, Fort Job, right. The Inviolate Witness, Wolves of Shadow, all these regions, all these areas are in fact primary to the elves, were built by the elves, abandoned by them through that whole conflict that they had, and then reoccupied by the Crystarium Guard. And fun fact, the Lakeland's so empty they put the Dwarven dailies. And that's, yeah, I think the big part of it is just, pushing that, that huge amount of loss because of the result of their infighting. They had a huge war that, the Warriors of Light had to get involved with, right? They were part of that. They were in there, right? You actually get to see that cutscene in a particular series of quests that I don't want to go too deep into because I really do want everyone to get the role quest done. So, because they're actually really, really good. But yes, and once again, as a point, right? The Shadowkeeper is actually one of the bosses of Eden's Promise. You fight the Shadowkeeper, or a memory of the Shadowkeeper, in Eden's Promise Litany. And that character, as well as the gnolls and the wargs, right, was a result of that magic that the Shadowkeeper used with the elves, turned them into those wolves, and just a lot of hidden bits and pieces throughout the world. You find there's an Amaro in Wolkdorf, right, in Mheg, who was there at the war and was a veteran of that war. And you actually learn that that particular Amaro was wounded by one of the wargs, and there's a reason why they had to leave. Well, they were raised to health and then left. They left that area, but they do remember spending their time with the elves of Lakeland. Yeah, you can see her silhouette in the Eden fight as well. Yep. They are so good with those mini details. It's good stuff, right? And so some smaller stuff about the area of Lakeland, right? You can see on the map, there's the Church of the First Light, right? And the Church of the First Light is actually a major portion of Vrandtic history, right? It was one of the most widespread religions at the time, right? They were at the height of Lakeland's prosperity, and they basically created a lot of the architectural marvels that you see today. The chapels and the buildings that they built, there was a huge portion of the church that contributed to that. And they started with the elves, but the religion spread to all the people. So there was Galgian members, there was Drawn members, and a huge reminder, right? This is actually something that I skipped over. The kingdom of Voeburt, right? The kingdom of Voeburt, up there in the northern lands of Norvrandt, were actually enemies with the elves of Lakeland. The stay was a ruin. It's a ruin now, but it was a fort prepared to protect Lakeland from invasion from the kingdom of Voeburt. They actually had a very, very difficult relationship between the two nations prior to the flood. So, a little bit different than what we're used to on the source, but, as it is, they are able to establish their own history. It's really, really cool that they did that. But the religion, was accepted by all peoples, and was a huge portion of Norvrandt's history until, of course, the Flood of Light, which, when you have a church that worships the light, and then the light comes and destroys everything you hold dear, it's really, really hard to continue to believe in that. It's just, natural effect. But from what it states, at least what it's implied, is that a lot of the highest, the most believing members then, in fact, were able to find solace in the dark, and then the faith of the Knights Blessed arose to take that gap that the Church of the First Light once held. So pretty cool stuff there, right? Let's see, how much more we got a few more. This is going a little bit faster than I expected, as is the case with a lot of these things. So I'm gonna try to go through the last bit I had with this, right? You may have seen on the map, there's the Mortal Irons, the Hour of Certain Durance, right? That area was, in fact, a prison, right? The Hour of Certain Durance was a prison. The Mortal Irons was the name of the homes of the wardens that kept that prison. And it used to have a different name back in the day, but they don't remember what that name is. They call it the Mortal Irons now as a symbol of it's a somber name reflecting the state of the area. And the reason why that place is really interesting that they pointed out is because the Light Warden of Lakeland was actually a prisoner there. It was an elven prisoner that was left behind, and when the Flood of Light took hold, that prisoner then became the Light Warden of Lakeland, known as Philia, right? Which they named because the Light Warden then decided to attack his hometown, when he used to be from there, then decided to turn on it and destroy its neighbors. And so they refer, it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to brotherly love, but not so much because Philia destroyed everything that they were raised with. So interesting little tidbit there. I like that they actually have pretty set-in stories for the Light Wardens as well. And yeah, the church's influence still does, yeah, exactly. Rami's saying that the church still exists in the modern colloquial terms. They say sin eater. The word sin eater comes from them. The sinners, when they call each other sinners and stuff like that, and the irony as well. Yeah, oh yeah, the irony of Philia destroying where they were from. It's really, really interesting. I do think there's a lot of really cool little tidbits like that throughout the side quests, throughout the geographic lore, whatever you're able to do there. Honestly, even the lead quests tell you a little bit too. I like doing lead quests because they give you little bits and pieces of information that's helpful to understanding the region. All right, and on we go to the next one, Kholusia. So Kholusia, right? It's an island nation that was ruled by Umor. And so there's a bit of a distinction of history that we find a lot of history more steady during the time after the flood, right? A lot of what Kholusia a lot of what has happened in Kholusia is a result of after flood effects, right? But at the time, right, it's ruled by Umor now, right? It's been ruled by Umor, and the military might of this region was basically, they had the strongest military in all of Norvrandt, right? And they were at the fore of the fight against the Sin Eaters until 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, at the point of start of Shadowbringers, they pulled out of the war effort. They didn't contribute as much as they were, and then they established the whole concept of, you know, the bonded citizens, the free citizens, Gate Town, all that stuff that you know, all that really, really very, very realistic social stratosphere concepts that they put out there. That stuff is very, very much recent in terms of, you know, to the result of the flood, and as well as ongoing history in the region. But yes, everyone travels here. Reason why everyone travels to Kholusia, why there's such a heavy population here, is because at the time, of course this is different now, but at the start of Shadowbringers, this area did not have as much Sin Eater attacks as anywhere else. Right? And they actually said, they state later on in the MSQ that they noticed that Vothri had the ability to tame these Sin Eaters. And they were like, yo, you know, he's helping us. He's helping us survive. And of course, later on we find out why, but this creates a very huge social dynamic, because you have a lot of people who are willing to fight, and then some people who get to the point where they can't fight anymore. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're losing too much, their hope is gone. What else do? You go to Kholusia. You go to Kholusia and you try to live out the last bit of your days in perpetual bliss, hopefully. Right? Obviously, if you don't offend anybody and if you follow all the rules, you can live out the rest of your life in perpetual bliss. But there's a lot of stuff to get there. And honestly, it seems too good to be true, but that's just it, right? When you get to a point where there's just not, you just don't have that hope anymore. What else is there to do, right? But all of that is very, very much recent. The development of the last 20 years, and when Vothri rose to power at once his father passed away, right? But they have a lot of settlements that are outside Gate Town who wish to continue to fight and do their absolute best and stay the course, and keep committing themselves to a greater cause of, you know, self-sufficiency or what have you, or you know, depending on, you know, maintaining the legacy of their forefathers and things like that. And it has a lot of cost. There's a lot of people that do still pass away from the Sin Eaters in the area. They get attacked regardless of their proximity to Gate Town, because it's still not within the, you know, there's a specific area that doesn't get attacked, and then that area gets always attacked. But there's a particular incident that's very, very important to the history of this region, and that is the attack of Daikaiosin, right? Now, if you know the history of how the Sin Eaters work, right? You got the Light Wardens, who are the massive, you know, power centers. Their sheer amount of ether draws all the Sin Eaters around them, and they're usually the ones where they contain most of the Sin Eater attacks. However, some Sin Eaters that are stray Sin Eaters, who do not connect themselves to any of the Light Wardens, tend to wander about, and that's why they have the settlement council at the Crystarium has established the bounty hunters to go and take those targets out, because they do put people at risk. The strongest of these stray Sin Eaters are the Cardinal Virtues, and these Cardinal Virtues, what's really, really problematic about them in this area is that they look like the erstwhile Warriors of Light, the self-same individuals that are accused for causing the Floodlight in the first place. And it's really, really defeating and difficult for the people, because this attack of Daikaiosin on the city of Right, on the village of Right, really, really messed up a lot of things. As far as, I would say, a balance between, you know, the individuals who were trying to do their best on their own and the individuals who were going to Gate Town, there was, you know, kind of like ebb and flow between those. But the moment that Daikaiosin did that attack, everyone was gone. They were done. So many people died. Daikaiosin killed a lot of individuals in Right, and this also, you know, the mayor took his own life as a result of the attack of Daikaiosin. The current mayor now, but before that happens, the individual who was his friend, right, lost his wife and became, disillusioned, right? There was just so much going on. And of course, you got the areas, so you can actually see some of the areas that are connected to that, right? The Greeley Bridge and the Greeley Styes, right? It's a area that was run by a family at the time who were well known for maintaining a huge pig pen, right? And these wild animals killed all their pigs. The family disappeared except for 2 members of this family. It was the daughter of the Greeleys and her betrothed. They moved to Wright to try to pick themselves back up, but when the attack happened, when Dehkiasin came in, Dehkiasin killed the daughter's betrothed, and then she threw herself off the bridge in grief. And the area now contains the legend that you can see her ghost, and you can actually do a quest related to that. It's actually really, really cool. They have a lot of little tidbits here and there that show you how much people were affected by that attack, and in fact it is the core of one of the role quests, is learning more about Dehkiasin and how that works out. But that's the central aspect of Lowlands, of the Kholusian lowlands and all that area, right? And then of course, you got Still Tide. They call it Still Tide because the ocean waters don't move. The White Oil Falls is the same reason. It flows slow, so it looked like oil to everybody, and they actually called it that because of the thing. The entire region is very, very much profoundly affected by the Flood of Light, despite being the area with the greatest military power. And some little other tidbits, right? You got the Slow Road, right? You may have seen that on the map. The Slow Road is the name of the area that used to be heavily occupied by Talos, right? They used to have Talos going up and down that road, and because they were, Talos do take a bit of time when they're walking to and fro, they called that the Slow Road because of it being the thoroughfare for those constructs. And as you can see, they're no longer using that road, and most of the constructs there have been left and put into disrepair. And of course, the biggest part of this, right, Kholusia being the home of Daedalus Stoneworks, who are the official known creators of the Talos. They started here. They took their creations to Amh Araeng and were the primary source of labor to help that mining concern grow. All the individuals there that grew their fortunes on the mining industry, they were able to benefit as a result of the Talos contracts. They lobbied between Kholusia and Amh Araeng, and the main reason, and this is jumping a little bit ahead, the main reason why Amh Araeng fell into disrepair was because the Mistel and those that were in charge of those contracts, the Daedalus Stoneworks individuals, left and returned to Yulmore to, as you know, live out the end of their days in relative bliss and peace and unaware of current events, and as a result, Amh Araeng fell poor into very, very bad state as a result. Kind of like a parallel of Ironworks, I would say if you that's a really good observation, because we do have a lot of parallels as a result. And I will say that the Daedalus Stoneworks did improve a lot of lifestyles at the height of their industry, prior to signing off entirely, and most of its remaining members, including the erstwhile president, left and went to Yulmore to live out the rest of their days. But of course, if you do get a chance, you go through you play through 5.1, you actually renovate a lot of that process, so it's pretty cool. And yeah, perhaps a bit. I would say if it isn't meant to be a connection, it definitely is a nod. Definitely is a nod to the concept of these industrious individuals helping out and growing these nations. But yeah, you do help bring a lot of that back, and it's pretty cool. Throughout the side quests and the main quest, you were able to kind of reestablish that authority, and of course kick out the individual that was causing all the doldrum effect, I would say, about how everyone was just kind of wasting away essentially until the end of days, because they didn't see any point in continuing to fight a never-ending battle, right, as they mentioned it. But it's really interesting to kind of see how the region changes over time, because you see all of this, you leave, you come back to it, right? You get to activate the ladder, which you can kind of see in the art here, right? This ladder was one of the main impacting developments of the region because they were able to establish trade up with the Highland Dwarves. As a result of the latter, they had the city of Amity, which you can see is kind of like a neutral ground between dwarves and the rest of the people, and that's where they established their trade points. All of that was a result of Daedalus Stonework and their continued efforts in the region until, of course, they gave up. But then you help them come back to it, so it's actually pretty cool. You actually get to see that come back into play, so pretty cool stuff. But yeah, Kholusia is very, very unique in the fact that it doesn't hold a lot of ancient history so much as it has recent history events. A lot of post-flood events. Everything that goes on here is definitely post-flood related events. So, Umars holds them. It is and that's why I mentioned it's very, very, very on point with some of the references they make. I felt a lot of IRL experience in playing this area, so I was like, ooh, I see what they're doing here. But very, very good, very, very good over region overall, and a lot of smaller historical impacts between the villagers that you meet and all the individuals there, helping them reestablish their industries. A lot of fun. I think that's really cool that they let you do that. Shh, be very, very quiet. I'm hunting eaters. I love it. I love the reference. Heck yeah. All right. Next up on our little tour, we have Amh Araeng, right? Amh Araeng is the Nabath word for majestic land. And this region, this parched land, this very southernmost tip of the Vrandtic region was home to the nation of Amh Araeng, right? And it was a nation built on active trade. They were able to establish connections throughout the land. Everyone was able to trade with them. They had a very unique industry in terms of their own. They actually had their own alloy, Nabathium, right? Which they were able to create into jewelry. They were able to sell that and create a very, very lucrative business among so many other things, and establish themselves as a very, very rich, very, 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 I mean, very similar to Ul'dah, and the zone of transcendent music. I love the music of Amh Araeng, for sure. But a really big part to note, right, was that the Namath would have not been able to get where they are without the help of the different nations in the area, right? They had the Mord. The Mord helped them. They had the Mord help them. They had the other nations in the area help them, right? Other neighboring peoples. But it was established by the humans, and a big part of their opportunities, the things that they created, was a result of those connections, right? And they acknowledged that. They acknowledged that the help of the Mord, all that stuff, the Daedalus Stoneworks, right? Stoneworks helped build a lot of their mining industry in the area, but they were able to establish a lot of, lucrative opportunities because of all this assistance, right? And so you can actually see on the map, and I have it on small, but if you look closer on a larger map, they actually have the heraldic sigil of Amh Araeng, which is a castle, 5 coins suspended on top of a castle, right? And those 5 coins stood for the 5 great houses of Amh Araeng. The coins, a symbol of their affluence, of their economic strength on top of that castle building. And yeah, they were definitely, I would say they're a very, very big Ul'dah similarity in terms of being able to establish economy in that region. But as you know, the Flood of Light was literally right there. It hit them super hard, right? That's where the Flood of Light was actually stopped. And despite it being stopped, it claimed most of their territory, and the remaining survivors went on this mass exodus following their last king by the name of the Malik Jamiel the Ninth. Led them in a huge exodus out of the region, and it has been abandoned since the onset of the flood. And only a few survivors of those areas now remain. But a lot of their history has been left to find, a lot of their artifacts, a lot of their jewelry techniques, that kind of stuff, which does create a thriving industry in Mord Souk, right? The Mord go out into the desert and dig up the remaining artifacts, the treasures that were left behind, and peddle them as wares. And so, the rarity of these items are usually, they're usually lost on them because they don't know the history, but they are able to get some, a semi-established economy as a result of the relics of Amh Araeng. And as Flimflam was saying, right, the twine was a big part of it as well. It was Mistel engineers, Ronso laborers, right? The Ronso are actually native to this region. They're from the Hills of Amber. It's their traditional home. And they established themselves with the Mistel, who brought the Talos in this area, and they created thriving mining communities where they were able to get stuff like the rudabite, which was used for Nabathium alloy and things like that for their jewelry and for their various implementations. They actually, those windmills you see, right, were constructed as symbols of friendship, and they used the Nabathium. Things like that were all components of the established friendships in that area, right? So they also have, the pristine palace of Malik, the Amh Malik, right? So Malik is their word for king, and it was an area that housed their tokens of friendship, and this was the core of their military might, their political prowess, completely lost and destroyed by the Flood of Light. It's a bit similar to the Albed of Final Fantasy X. Interesting. I will confess, I have not played 10 yet. I do plan to at some point, but because I want to try to play all of them as much as I can. But that's one I haven't been able to play. But I like that observation. That's actually pretty cool. So I would say they probably are inspired by the Albed, if not a nod to them, because Final Fantasy XIV is a theme park. It is meant to bring a lot of references to prior Final Fantasies, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's where it came from. All right. Some other small points that we can go over, right? Mount Buren Mines, Kelk, Garrick. These names are all Ronso of historical note, who their actions in history left their names in these areas. So if you ever wonder where these names come from, more or less they are the Ronso of the area, right? Buren was using Talos to carve into the mountain. There was a huge enterprise to try to cut ore out of the mountain itself using the Talos, and they have a lot of Talos remnants there as a result, right? And then, of course, we brought up Twine a little bit earlier, right? Twine is actually, the name Twine came from the idea of two tails entwined together. The reason being the Mistel and the Ronso both have tails, right? And so with their mining industry and their engineering industry working together, they believed that they would, it was the source of their economic power, and so they named that city in honor of that agreement that established business terms between the two groups, the two people. But as course, because of the Flood of Light, most of the Mistel moved out of that area a few years ago, and the Ronso have remained, and there's actually a bit of tension between remaining Mistel and the Ronso there because of that, the Mistel leaving. They like to call the Mistel weak because of that and things like that. And yeah, Ronso, the name Ronso is from Final Fantasy X. If I remember, Kimari, I think is the name, is one of the characters you play, or one of the party members is from that group. So it's pretty cool. I think it's really good points there, because the nods are definitely on purpose to remind you of 14's theme park experience. Get you in that mindset to remember all the good Final Fantasies. So you like how this feels like a history lesson? That's exactly what I'm going for. So I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that you're getting the vibe of a history lesson. I like doing these. These are my favorite things to do. So, but yeah. Oh, Kelk and Beer. Oh, they're Ronso names from 10. Okay, now I'm learning things. I definitely need to play some Final Fantasy X then. That's pretty cool. Cheers. I like it. I like it a lot. But yeah, let us continue to our next region of note, right? Of the first, we got Mheg. Now, really important thing to note here, right? It's called Mheg. When you go there, it's called Mheg, but the region was not, in fact, named Mheg in the past, right? Mheg is a recent development after Flood, when the Fae, who used to live in the forest region, right? They had to travel out of that forest because the forest region was destroyed by the Flood, and they moved into the the region of Voeburt, which was abandoned, and then they took it over, right? They took over Voeburt in the absence of the Verbertites. And of course, Mheg is the kingdom, that's the Fey word for Kingdom of Rainbows. And it is very much so. If you've been there, it is one of the... I might be a little biased, but I will say that is one of the most beautiful regions in Final Fantasy XIV, because you go there and there's literal rainbows everywhere. It's gorgeous. It's so pretty. I could sit there and just stare at it all day. But yes, it was known as this was the site of the Kingdom of Voeburt, and Voeburt has a very, very long history. This is all before the flood, though, right? Really important fact to point out is how much of this history has been changed as a result of the flood, right? But you have this area, right? This kingdom was born from an alliance between Drawn and Galgant, right? The Drawn and Galgant in the past used to fight all the time. There was a lot of bloodshed between the two groups, and they decided in order to prevent this bloodshed, they needed to come to an alliance. And so they established an alliance to prevent the further conflict. And what they decided, they had a process, a really important process of succession. They decided that the Drawn would retain the crown, right? But the next monarch in succession would be selected by a council of 5. The 5 members of this council, 3 of them would be Galgant members of noble families of those peoples. And so with this decision, they were able to stop the bloodshed, they were able to stop the battle, and form this powerful nation that ruled the north. You can also see on the map, one could say they were drawn... Oh my god, that's a good pun. That's a good pun. And yes, I love the Bookman's shells. I wish I could have... honestly, I feel like I kind of live in the mini Bookman's shells myself. I have a lot of books. So, I vibe with it. I vibe with it a lot. But yeah, so this area was, you can see on the map, right? There's a sigil here with 2 wolves, right? The 2 wolf heraldic symbol is the symbol of Voeburt, each wolf representing one for the Drawn, the other for the Galgant. And it was just, a big note was this, unity between the two peoples and the nation they were able to establish together. However, despite this long history, so the thing is that this group has been around for a very long time, right? Of course, they describe 2 specific members. Their names are Rodfert and Solard, right? These 2 individuals are identified as Warriors of Light and part of the original alliance that established Voeburt, right? They're the famed duo Voeburt members. And from this, right, we can't really track where it was established, the time frame, but we know that Voeburt had been around for at least 300 years or more prior to the flood, right? And they were able to honor, they had this oath of the covenant, they had this huge ceremony to celebrate the 300th year of establishment, and a lot of the stuff that we have today is a result of that continued alliance between those 2 groups. However, in recent times, and this was also prior to the flood, there was a incident involving a coup between the court and a individual known as Tadric. I won't get too much into this because this is actually a sizable plot device, like a huge portion of the plot. Role quests. It's a huge point of the role quest to learn about Tadric and what he was doing. But Tadric declared a coup, right? And the current heirs of the throne at the time were slain in the result. And because there was no longer a member of the royal family to take the throne, Voeburt fell into disrepair and was not at their full strength when the flood hit, thus losing a lot of their people and most leaving in the result of that. And once the flood happened, and a few years later, the Fae come moving in because they too lost their lands to the flood, and they find it completely abandoned. So they're like, finders keepers, and Voeburt became Mheg. But I do highly recommend this role quest if you are interested. Is the tank role quest. It's the tank role quest. It is, Rami's saying it's touched on 5.1. It's a hunt mark, and there's a short story. There's an actual Tales of the Shadows associated with the history of Voeburt and the decline of Voeburt prior to the flood. So I do highly recommend that you check those out. Your tank role quest, if you haven't done those yet. The hunt mark is Porus Paldia. check that out, and then of course read the short story alongside that, and you will get a bigger picture of all the history of Voeburt and what that's entailed. The tank role quest is a lot of fun, and it's also heavy. I did cry. I cry a lot, by the way. I cried a lot playing Shadowbringers, and that was one of the reasons I cried. The role quest made me cry a lot. So, and yeah, Tadric is definitely a huge part of the tank role quest, and is also mentioned in Tales of the Shadow. But there's a lot of points to that, and that very, very big reason why Voeburt is mainly Fae based now, right? And you know, historically speaking, of course, you have different areas in Mheg that are named after the prior occupants. You got Good Janana's Grace, which was named for the eye color of one of the Princess Janana, right? You have the Hand Mirror Lake, which is named after one of the princesses and things like that. And then on top of that, you have all the Fae names, which are runes, right? They use runes for their names as well as their regions, and it's both a letter and the power and stuff like that. You can't cry when your partner's dying and drinking so much booze that you can smell it all over the tears. Oh gosh. it's rough. It's rough. The Floodalide took a lot out of people. For sure. And just everything. Especially the Warrior's Light too. Oh, it's so good though. It's so good. There's a lot. A quick overview of the Fae groups that are in this area before we move on to the next part, right? You have the Pixies, right, which are the most well known. They play around, and they follow a lot of the previous traditions of Voeburtites. They protect a lot of, you know, they maintain an ongoing sheep herding, which was something that the people of Voeburt did, right? They were shepherds of a sort. So you got the Pixies who are, you know, maintaining this tradition. You have the Numo who were there during the Kingdom of Voeburt, and they were actually companions with a lot of the individuals there. They worked with them. They were sought after for advice. There were Numo that served in the court, which you actually meet. Beck Luck, right, is one of the major individuals of the MSQ, was in fact one of the individuals that served in the court of the Kingdom of Voeburt, and the resulting coup was what resulted in Beck Luck seeking solace and becoming, or solitude, not solace, solitude, and deciding to cut their access to everyone else for the rest of all time that they could, because they wanted nothing to do with anybody because of what had happened. It's also mentioned in the short story. It's actually really good. But yeah, they have that, and then of course you have the Fua, right, who are a lot more difficult to deal with. And then, you know, Pixies do weird things, the Fua do terrible things, right, in natures, right? And you have the Fua who filled up the entire ruin of the castle city with water. That lake was not there prior to the flood, and they created that lake, and they definitely don't like messing around. If you engage with the Fua, they're going to take you. They're going to turn you into water or something. You know, they don't mess around. But as you see later on, they actually become pretty fast allies when you befriend the Fairy King. So it's actually pretty cool. And of course, the final major group of the area, the Amaro, right, who are the result of an enchantment that was placed on them ages in the past, right? The Amaro were bred from the Kama, and they were gifted the ability to speak and the power of intelligence from Ronkan mages. Now, that magic has faded over time, but as a result, right, as a result of that magic, it still, you know, traces in their bloodline and their genetics, and every once in a while, after a certain amount of time, a member of the Amaro will learn the ability to speak, will have the ability to speak and be able to interact and everything. And as a result of this, you do find the Amaro in that area speaking and being able to communicate, and they all have all this history because they've been around for a very long time, but all of that was a result of Ronkan magic. So they have a very long, they're not particularly Fae in the terms of, you know, how we understand the Fae, but they abide by the rules of the Fairy King, and they do also take Fae names at times if they're not already named by their previous owners and things like that. So pretty cool development in Volekdorf. The quest lines are really, really great there, and the Amaro are just really, really cool. I love Amaro, and they're primarily the only reason why I'm leveling everything to 80. So I find it interesting, Longmere Lake did get its name for Voeburt only after Voeburt was gone. Yeah, it's from Voeburt's royalty, and it's like those memories, right, the retention of the practices of the people in the area and things like that. They're really, really good at maintaining that. Super, super cool. I love Amh so much. The only reason I'm leveling anything to 80 is because of that. But and of course we do have we do have a bit. We do have a bit. So I think I have 30 more minutes. So we'll go over our last area, and then after our last area and our discussion of that, we will then start taking questions. So make sure you have those questions ready, and we'll be able to get those taken care of. All right, next part, final part of our Vrandtic Voyages panel, of course, is Rak'tika. Now, I have to apologize for this. I saw this weird little, I don't know what that is. Ignore it. It showed up right as I started everything, and I was like, I can't fix it. It's too late now. So, funny, weird. Yes, Lahi. The most, I saved the best for last. Lahi. Because, you know, no one ever thought that was going to be as the meme here, for sure. But what an area! What an area! Rak'tika is fascinating area, and a huge. Now, I will say in terms of impacts, right? Voeburt has been around for over 300 years or more, right? We don't really have a timeline, but they've been around for a while. We have Amh Araeng have been around for a while, and all these different nations that have established themselves prior to the flood. But the Ronkan Empire had already been long gone prior to the flood. Long gone, right? The Ronkan Empire was established 3,000 years ago, and the remnants of their history, the remnants of their impact on the nation, still affect the people today, because most, if not all, the magic used in the first and in Norvrandt is developed from Ronkan mages. You see it a lot when you are fighting them, especially, and so it's really funny because it even goes into like constructs, right? When you go to the Grand Cosmos, you're fighting remnants, kind of like spiritual remnants of some of the famous characters there, and they're using Ronkan magic, even though they're constructs of magic. And you're like, what? So Ronkan magic is a huge established principle, and a lot of mages follow through, right? We got Alamit, the warrior light, was using Ronkan magic to help her people. You see Ronkan magic go all over the place and used by all the mages, all the magic based classes in the area. They've been established ages ago, and they are the foundation of a lot of people and their abilities today, right? All hail the great Serpent Ronka. Scree! I love it. I love it. As deep and historically important this area is, there's a lot of memes associated with it as well, and I love it. It's so good. Get that lore here, right? And you definitely can see some parallels between them and the Allegans because of their establishment, the power that they had in their glory days, and how they definitely 100% maintain a presence even now, even past the flood, right? Lost Scree. Getting the best elements here, right? Love it. Scree. Oh my goodness. So we have, of course, two main regions, I would say, two specific areas: the City Swamps, Lake Tusimekta, right? That area is, of course, an area that is used by the major religions of the Dark that have established themselves in the area. We have Soken's brilliant. Love that guy so much. But the major religions of the Dark are established here. You have the Knights Blessed, right? And then you have the Children of the Everlasting Dark, who are the major, I would say, factions or sects of these religions, these faiths that worship the Dark. You have the one who, the Knights Blessed, who are peaceful, but they're very, very much revolts. They hate all light-based things, and that they hide their names as a result. They think they don't utter their true names because they protect their true names from the light. They have special statements that they make to protect each other as a community. Alin Tuta, which is the word for good evening in Ronkan, and they use that as kind of a passcode for their people. And have you enslaved in Shadow Race to charge your phones? Nope, you're good. You're better than Alec. Yeah. The Ronkans didn't. Now, I will say it's a little frustrated. I will say that a little frustrated point on me as a lore enthusiast. The Kitari quests were so difficult to do because the Kitari quest made you choose the history of Ranka, and I still don't think I chose well. I still think I chose the wrong ones. And then, like, if you look back and you check, right, it changes the entire quest line based on what you choose. And I'm just like, what is the true history of Ranka then? I'm so mad. There's no real, like, do we have a developed, like, whatever the Kitari found, was that actually true, or is it a bunch of assumptions based on ancient history we don't have full proof of? Which, I mean, I get it, we do that stuff IRL, but that was Kitari quest made me grouchy. Aling Tuta is the same thing in is it Quechua or Quechua? I think I've heard that it's Guatemalan, right? I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And seriously disappointed we didn't see any high-tech Ranka. They left a lot of their relics behind. They left a lot of the ruins, but we didn't actually meet... Yeah, we didn't meet any of the individuals from that area. But, just, like, very magic-based. Choose to believe the true history of Ranka is canonically lost, and we're just exploring various valid theories. I believe it. It's rough, because it's just... There's so much there, and then I'm like, but what is it legit, though? But they had a really good establishment. We did learn a bit, which is pretty cool. From the little bits and pieces that you get for a bit. That's not definitively based on your choices, because good lord, I could not make a choice. But yes, so according, at least one of the big things that we were able to find out was that it was founded by a Ronso warrior. In fact, so the Ronso have been around for a very long time, and they, the leader of the first emperor of the Ronkan Empire was a Ronso who declared their authority, and then from there they were conquering the peoples of the area and stuff like that. Was it native Peru, but there's some spread across South America. Yeah, see what you mean. It's just because you're sitting there, it's like, is this the real history or not? And then they got, like, I looked back on it, and it's like, the quests are so different depending on what you pick, so I never actually, I was like, am I actually picking the right history? But what is cool, though, is that they did establish modern magic as we know it. Most magic, if not all of it, in the region is a result of the Ronkan Empire, and, the Maros being able to speak, the healing techniques, the spell crafting, the fireball, all that stuff. Very, very, very big point there, for sure. Some other points of the Rak'tika region. Fano, right, was built specifically by the Vis to guard the relics of the Kamul Astropolis. The big thing is to remember now, because of the flood, right, because of the floodlight, Fano is the only remaining village of the Vis. There actually used to be several villages of the Vis in that area, and they're gone now. There's only Fano left, and so the Vis are very much limited in numbers because of the flood. Despite how thick the forest brush was and the trees and blocking out, there was still the influence of the Cinears were very heavy in the trees. It's terrible. It's kind of sad because you tried to hide from the light and you couldn't even hide from the light in the giant forest. They lost a lot there as well, right? But they did protect, the Great Pyramid of Uxner. We were able to learn a little bit about the Ronkan religion, right? The Ronkans believed in 4 major deities. We have Oxcatoril, the keeper of flame, Oxcharl, the keeper of winds, Yixlaqua, which is the keeper of rain, and Yixanpa, the keeper of the harvest. Right? Those are the chief deities that comprise the morning stars. So the 4 mini pyramids that you see in front of the Great Pyramid of Uxner, each one is dedicated to one of those major deities. There are other names that do come up in the storyline. We learn about Yixmaya, right, who is a goddess of beauty and the goddess of the woods, and they actually say that most of what the Vis did and the choices they made to head into the Great Wood and things like that was a result of Yixmaya's influences, right? So the Vis honor Yixmaya above all the other deities, and then you got Oxtalan, which is the keeper of the underworld and god of depths, right? And so the Kitari worship Oxtalan, and there's a huge region in the area called the Oxtalan Gap, which, from what they know, is very, very steep. They don't know, they have never seen the bottom of the Oxtalan Gap, so that's why they call it that, because it brings to mind the underworld, because it's so profoundly deep. So earth, fire, wind, and water, like crystal elements from most games. Yeah, I could see it. I mean, and if anything, we're talking about the first, right? They worship the light, right? One of their primary religions was the light, and then of course the very heavy elemental regions that were missing in the post-flood territory, right? Which we learned about. I could see that it was easier for them to make those connections, but most of the religions are they're briefly mentioned, and they're mentioned in the memories of the people and things like that. Some other important stuff, right? There's Lozatl's conquest, right? So this big old gap area that you can go through. You actually fight Lozatl in the dungeon of the Katana Ravel, and from what we know, they actually they have a theory that Lozatl was in fact a early form of the Talos, or at least leading to the design and the concept of it. What's up, Athenelia? How you doing? But one little small point, my last point, I will put out there before, because I think I have 20 more minutes left, so we're gonna use this for good. But one really cool thing I thought was interesting about Rak'tika, and there's a bunch of different areas you can check. I mean, the forest is massive, and there's a lot of history tied to the Vis, and the Vis being able to live 200 years or more, they actually retain a lot more memories and history of the area than any of the others people, right? But Mural's Regret, right, was a member of the Vis who made the decision to leave, and compelled, because they usually the Vis wanting to leave, they describe it as a sort of longing. You have a choice between staying in the forest and following the Emperor's orders to protect the area, or leave, right? You got to pick one or the other, and when they're compelled to leave, they always have to go through a certain area that is described as it's like a river that's covered in azure flowers, right? And Mural's Regret, they say that was a result of one of the first Vis to have left, who, when she turned around and realized the choice, the impact of her choice, the burden of her choice of leaving, she cried, and her tears were recognized by the gods, and it created that stream. And it's definitely a legend-based story, but as a result, they practice a ritual where they go to that river, and they have azure flowers which they allow to flow through that river, and the azure flowers are supposed to be, they're allowing that to serve as like a reminder to those that they've lost, that they haven't forgotten them, and it's an active, it's like a tribute to those they've lost. They send those flowers down the river all the time for those that have passed away. Pretty cool tribute, pretty cool ritual that they enact as a result of their legends. And I mean, there's just so much. I will, one final point that I thought was really funny. I'll put it out there. I absolutely love dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs so much. I'm a dinosaur nerd. And so every time they put a dinosaur in the game, I'm all over it, right? There's a hunt mark that's a Triceratops that you can find in Rak'tika, and they actually say that is the embodiment of the goddess of the harvest, or Yxanpa, is in the form of a Triceratops. And I'm actually very, very much happy that they chose to take a dinosaur and make that an embodiment of a goddess. I'm like, yes, let's go. They actually have dinosaur references scattered about in the first. You got the Samuels as well, which is pretty cool. So that was the little final point of Rak'tika that I thought was great. Poor Pachamama. Yes, you know exactly which one. It's great. I mean, I hate killing dinosaurs, but I appreciate dinosaur references as much as they put them. Alrighty. And that, beautiful, beautiful individuals of chat, ladies and gentlemen, non-binary friends, this is our conclusion of Vrandtic Voyages. However, like I said, we now have about 15 minutes, about 15 minutes or so. I will be taking questions. This is the Q&A session now. I wanted to make sure we had a chance to go through all the major regions before we open the doors to questions. So, please, once again, if you can, highlight your question and, give me a few minutes to read it so that way I can address the question, and we'll be able to talk about that. So we'll be taking questions for the next 10 minutes or so. I say 15 minutes. Yeah, because I have about 15 minutes until the panel's over. So we'll use the remainder of the time to take your questions. And feel free to ask that you have. Mural's Regret always get me because I know it's a 12 reference, but Mural's the source of a VR naming convention rather than the first. Ooh! Sounds you got it good. Oof, you're right though. Oh no! That's all I'm gonna think about now. No! You have a Lor's question? need to use 2 highlights. No worries, no worries. And it says, you're in the Discord call right now. I have a question that's more speculative rather than a concrete answer. Of course. I am always down to drop theories. I will always mark it, too. I'll be like, theories, all that kind of stuff. So, Callus, feel free to ask any question relating to that. Go ahead and grab this. Let me see. Yeah, now I can't unnotice it. Gosh. Alright, so I'll give you a minute, Callus, to write that up, and we'll take that question. But, Elisa... Oh.
I'm actually ready.
Okay.
Here, buddy, if you want to ask it right here.
Yeah. What's up?
Alright, so long time lore strider here. I played a stupid posing ranger on Balmung. I'm the Emerald Eorzean. Callus goes, Wilka, how you doing? I want to ask you personally, because we have the addition of the Viera, of the Ronso, of the Numo, a lot of different staples in the Final Fantasy series that have been up to this point. I wanted to ask you, based on the information that you have and that you've seen in the Final Fantasy XIV lore at large, where do you think the Final Fantasy IX Burmesians and Clarins come into the mix, if you know what those are?
Okay, so I will say I have not played 11. Oh, you said 9. That's 9. You said 9, right? I've not played 9.
Yes. So in 9, Burmecia and Clara were two cities that worked together, and they kind of shared militaries and stuff. And Burmecia was more of a military organization, where Clara was more of like scholars and mages and such. And they were pretty much rat people. And Clara got fucking nuked.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're talking about, because I think I've seen that in social media. So I will say, as far as that, if they do bring those groups, speculative as you said, either in passing reference in some sort of area, because that's the thing, Final Fantasy XIV is a theme park. It is meant to reference as many Final Fantasies as possible. If they do bring those individuals into the group, it might be in a new expansion somewhere in passing reference, or if not actually there, maybe we still have regions that have not been explored yet. We have Meracidia, and we have, as mentioned in chat, the New World, or Mamuk, right? And so there's always opportunity to add references there, and some sort of connection to that. So there's still space in the game for those individuals. Right now, I wouldn't know where exactly to put them, but if they do make those references, I still think there is time to do so. And of course, we still have a full new story that's going to be coming out after the end of Endwalker, so who knows, possibility.
It is also entirely possible on the same vein as Norvrandt was one of the places that introduced us to all of the new, like the Viera and the Ronso and such. They could have just totally been nuked in the flood of light, and we're never going to see them. But it's always nice to have the possibility there.
Yep, because they.
Yeah, that was the question I had, man. Thanks for your panel.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. Appreciate you. Alrighty. Let's see. Get up and then. So, Lisa, Holy Priest, you are asking, since the primals feed on ether of their element. Oops. Go ahead and grab them. See, now chat's being. Actually, you know what? I got my phone. Let me pull it up on the phone. Because it keeps scrolling down, but I will go ahead and read it here. Alright. So, since primals feed on ether of their element and ambient ether, why did Hydaelyn need to use energy to send Minfilia first as the word of the mother? And why did Minfilia simply stop the light instead of letting Hydaelyn absorb the light and take the light crystals away from Lord Sook? It seems that Hydaelyn and Zodiac haven't been able to regenerate their power like many primals can. Do you think this is the case or something else? And with the Eden raids, we learn through an unreliable narrator that Hydaelyn was supposedly the source of this light, so why would Hydaelyn flood the first when she didn't flood the source, trying to kill Lahabred? Do you really think it was Hydaelyn, or was something else going on? Okay, so got a bit of a question here. So let me try to unpack this, the piece by piece. So we are saying that we have the primals who feed on the elements, right? And why did Hydaelyn need energy to send Minfilia first? So just as a reminder, right? When Hydaelyn protects us from the Ultima weapon, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but is in fact a very major component of the story, because when Hydaelyn created that shield of light to protect us from the Ultima spell, that took pretty much everything she had at the moment, right? So she was not able to do anything for a very long time, up until the point that we do meet with her at Anti-Tower, and then of course use our crystal lights to give her the power to do what she was doing, right? Big part of it was just that the Ultima spell, of course, as a Final Fantasy reference in general, Ultima is one of the greatest magics ever composed, ever. It's literally ruin incarnate. She did not have a choice but to expend pretty much everything she had at the time, which she was already weak as a result of prior calamities, right? She was already losing her powers because of the prior 7 calamities that had already happened, and then having to put the shield to protect you from Ultima took everything she had. So she had to use the Crystal of Lights to do that, the Crystal of Lights to get you there, and the Flood of Light is more or less not so much her, but the balance between the forces, right? The thing to remember is that Hydaelyn is a composite. It's a will, right? It's a primal construct, but the light is still a primordial force, and when you do things in favor of the light that increases its power too much, it will tip the balance in negative, like in a negative sense, and will do more damage than good. It's essentially the way I always like to see it is I always like to see light and darkness as in names for law and chaos, right? Or some sort of sense like that. Because when you have too much of stability, then it just becomes stagnation. But if you have too much chaos, and everything's everywhere, you know. They wanted to point out that even though Hydaelyn does embody the light and uses the light, and it uses light to, you know, give us power and so many things like that, it is still a primordial force outside of who she is. She's mainly a construct that uses light, but she isn't light. You know, if that makes sense. She's a construct of light. So the world was already listening too far in the light. Hydaelyn sent enough light, it triggered a flood. It was like there was too much favor, too much light, too much actions that were giving light benefit in that area. Not to mention that the plane itself was very much light-based, more so than any of the other shards. And the reflections all had different balances that they mentioned in 3.4. Every reflection has a different balance level, and the first had more light than darkness. And so all the stuff that the Warriors of Light were doing, right? All the stuff that the Shadowkeeper caused to make the Warrior Lights become Warrior of Light, that created an imbalance. And she didn't send the light, but she was able to kind of, you know, stall it in so many ways, because she had the ability to command it, kind of thing, but it wasn't her that put the light in the area. That light was already pouring into the area because of that. So yeah, there's a bit to unpack there. Hopefully that helps. But once again, feel free to ping me at any time on Twitter. We can keep this conversation. I do know I have a limited amount of time now. I just realized how close we are to our ending. But for sure, I will answer any questions you may have on Twitter, for sure. So let us continue. So, do you have a timeline we can figure out for the fall of Voeburt? I know it was sometime after the flood, because the first reincarnation of Minfilia helped them fight the Sin Eaters. Okay, so we don't have timeline in sense of like years. We do know that Voeburt had been around for a while, and was established a long time prior to the flood. And I will say that the fall, like they lost their heir prior to the flood. They lost their heir as a result of the coup, right? The coup that was enacted by Tadric, and all the crazy stuff that happened with the transformations, right? They forced their hand, and they were very, very much weakened at the state. And so when the flood happened, they pretty much had no choice but to leave, because they weren't able to protect their lands from the Sin Eaters. And even though one of the Minfilies there did help them, they were unable to protect them. They were already pretty much in a fallen state by the time of the flood. So you could say the fall of Voeburt would have happened before as a result of that, the whole coup and everything, when Princess Saldia passed away, and from that decline all the way, then the flood happens, then they had to leave, if that makes sense. But Minfilia was there to help them fight, but they were already pretty much a broken nation at that point. So I hope that helps, Flimfamberg. Thank you so much for asking that question. Let's see. Go ahead and What do you think of the Knights Blessed ceremony with the pool that they placed the crystals in? That was a beautiful ceremony. I thought that was very, very much full of symbolism, full of meaning. The representation of each of these stones represented the person that had passed on, and they were sending them to the night sky, which was their version of the afterlife. That actually hit me really hard because I do like beautiful symbolism like that. I love artistic symbolism, things that mean things like that. Very, very powerful. So really, really cool. I did like that ceremony a lot, Kenny Ray. Appreciate that question. Let's see. We have any cool. Indy asks, any cool plant related lore for the first? How have plants been affected by the flood of light? So I will say one cool thing I learned was that the dream powder that we saw used in the instance with the Umorans occupying the Laxenloft during that time when they were really, really upset that we fought the White Light Warden. That dream powder is a result of the bark of the trees of Rak'tika. They actually extract that in large amounts, and they not only do they use the dream powder for defensive purposes, they also use it to help people who are hurt in the Spagyrics to get some rest, and among other things, right? And they also have so dream powder is a huge, like plant-based. They're able to derive that from the forest, and they're able to use that for everything. And it's one of my favorite things. I like the idea of dream powder. Is a really, really cool concept. Let's see. They have the trees are really specific to the area. I like that they put purple carrots. Purple carrots are cool, right? And trying to think of some of the other cool plant lores, because you can find a lot of really cool plant lore when they do botanist stuff, for sure. And it's really, really cool. I do like what they've enabled in terms of the region's effect. I won't say I've seen anything generally affected by the light though. If the floodlight came in, it mostly destroyed most of the vegetation in those areas. But what has remained has still been able to kind of flourish in the absence of the fact that they've been limited to a specific region and things like that, for sure. And yeah, Leave Quest 2. Leave Quest 2 are really, really good for that kind of stuff. Yeah, and thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. Let's see, we've got complete shoot from the hip, have fun with it thing. Would you speculate on Ranjit, region of origin, reign for his job? What kind of meta-series reference he might represent? Ranjit was really cool because they actually mentioned that what he does, his martial arts, hail from a region that was destroyed in the flood. We actually don't know where that stuff comes from, but he's one of the last practitioners of it. The whole thing with Gukumats, right? The dragon familiar style stuff, the scythe attacks, the kicks, the fighting, all of that was all derived from his hometown or his home nation, which no longer exists. It's not on the map, and they haven't really mentioned it where exactly it came from. But that combat style is very, very much lost to the flood. And I've seen a lot of rumors that's very similar to the Reaper's concept. So pretty cool idea. And I thought it was super cool, like very, very Super Saiyan style stuff. I thought it was cool. Thought it was very, very cool for sure. We got a question from Stovington, if I said that right. So are we going to meet Fusoya on the moon in Endwalker? Is he Allegan or a Maritime? They don't make a reference to Fusoya. I will be upset. I actually played 4. And I enjoyed 4, and it was one of my favorite Final Fantasies. I love the plot of 4, and I definitely would love to see many references, and especially Fusoya. I don't know if he'll be Allegan or a Maritime though. I will see. I will say I'm betting for a Maritime, if anything, like at least a passing reference, if anything. But because we already have had very heavy 4 references already, so. Let's see. I think the Ranjit's a Reaper and Gukumats is a Void Scent. I could see it. It's the dragon familiar, maybe a similar concept for sure. The spell Ultima is supposed to be a fraction of that. How does that relate to how it's referred to being named after the H Ultima in her own use of the spell Nivalis Raid? Oh, Velruka. That question, it's painful because I don't think we've actually really been told yet the connection between Ultima Weapons Ultima and Ultima High Seraph's Ultima. It's still up in the air. They kind of made a passing reference, and I'm just like, no, you need to explain that a lot more than you did. All we know is that one inspired the other, and that's about as far as we've gotten so far, and that's it. That's all they've told us. I don't know what else to say with that. Aside from the fact we need to, like, ask Koji as soon as we can. What is a theory on the sun symbol of the Ascians, as well as who the Ascian as the Ascian who became Hydaelyn? So I will say I think it's cool that they use the sun symbol, because I actually looked it up. They explain it with the whole the zodiac. If you look at the zodiac, every passing star, right, it has something to do with the sun's position. And so that symbol with the alchemy, association with alchemy, with gold, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of powerful symbolism there, for sure. And I enjoy it. I enjoyed that they brought it up, for sure. And as the Ascian who became Hydaelyn, right, for what we know, Venat is very much going to be a huge component of Endwalker story. So all we know is that they decided that they needed to create a counterbalance to Zodiark, because they believe that the continuous sacrifices was not the way to go, and that's all we got. Just a small portion of information for 5.2. Everything else that we will get for Venat will definitely be an Endwalker focus, for sure. But yeah, and it has been good enough for stuff. Yep, for sure. And say almost certainly not a void send. 3 people that we know have been able to poke into the void. Yeah, the hollows and stuff like that. That's the role quest stuff, for sure. Let's see. Because yeah, they definitely spoke about how the 13th was like a mirror effect kind of thing to the reason why the first was so easy to fall was because of what was happening on the 13th. They don't really elaborate too much, but we definitely have a lot of like potential in the new void quests that came out, which I really hope they need to make more void quests. They gave us like a little smidgen of food, and I was like, no, I need more. What are you doing? Let's see. The Kenyan that caused Final Days, Lavos or Genova? I like the Lavos theory a lot. It would be really cool, but I can't tell. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure who exactly caused the Kenyan, but it's a very strong reference to those 2 forces or something to that effect. But we do need more void quests, yes. I'm going desperate. Tempered conversation wasn't listening. Kenyan was caused by... It was definitely a large scurry that caused all the issues, for sure. Alrighty. And I believe that is it for this panel. Seriously, thank you so much, everyone, for who came out, for asking questions. If I missed a question, I do apologize. Once again, feel free to ping me on Twitter @theSLM, or you can find me on Discord. You can message me there. I go by Crowtoen on Discord. Little doggy head that you can see there. I'll be jumping into the events for sure on day 2, day 3, and you'll find me as the character. I think I have a different character on Crystal, so I'll point out who that is later on. But here's the link there, right? Remember that there are still events going on. LunarCon is still going on for a little bit. There's a Slide the Foxes music panel that's going on, which is always a treat. Sly's music. I don't even the DJ. There we go. That's the word I was at. Great stuff, right? And of course, this is day 1 of the con. You still have a chance to be able to check out the events for tomorrow and for Sunday. And once again, huge shout out to Shenpai, to JoeCat, to all the individuals who ran this con, all the staff members. Holy crap! You all did some fantastic work. You're awesome. Like, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for all this work. You've done great stuff. An RP event tonight? Yes, check out the website. There's a bunch of stuff on the website that's still going on. They still have a bunch of events planning. And, good job. Sending you the PowerPoint. Spent most of the Shadowbringers. Still call the Mistel first, Makode. I got you. I'll definitely be able to send it. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. I love lore presentations. I do a lot of them for Aetherflow Media, and this is kind of like the first time I've done like an official formal one. So this was really cool. Hey, no, like grad school's important. I respect the student, you know. And yeah, for sure, feel free to add me on Discord as well. We can definitely talk, or you can join my Discord, whatever. We do have our links there for sure. All our stuff up there. I'm always down for that. I didn't put Amaranth because it's not a first. Yeah, that's very. I did want to keep that final portion more or less connected to the MSQ of Shadowbringers. It's a very unique area connected to the MSQ, as well as going to be a major part of Endwalker. But the lore of Amaranth is very much pre Norvrandt. It's not very Norvrandt in itself. So I'm glad you pointed that out for sure. We definitely wanted to focus more on Norvrandt lore rather than the bridged worlds lore between all the different reflections. So, but yeah, good, very good eye there, very good eye. And thank you for showing up. Thank you, Ken Crunch Goats. Appreciate it. I am between two ferns. Yep. Major reference to Koji Fox. Great panel. Thank you so much, Soundsea.